All right, guys, we're almost at the end. It's almost time for this video series to wrap up. We got a couple more videos to go through, and then hopefully NFL free agency will actually kick off on time, and we'll see what happens. But we've only got a couple positions left. I've been putting this one off for a while. I had to work very hard to collect all this information. Hopefully, it's worth it, and hopefully some theme on this board ends up being relevant when free agency and the draft starts. So, defensive tackle, we just did defensive end, so now we have to do tackle because both positions are very much in flux for this Seahawks team right now. Right now, we have Puna Ford and Nazir Jones on the roster. We know those guys are what they are. Puna Ford's a good run stuffer, can play, 50, 45% of the snaps, and he's good. Nazir Jones never really became what we were hoping he could become when he flashed onto the scene in 2017, but there's still time, I guess. And then we have a couple guys hanging around like Brian Moan and DeMarcus Christmas, and we don't know what we got with those guys, but maybe. So we have a couple decisions to make with the players we had last year. We have a lot of free agents to go through, and of course, we have the draft. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. Currently, the players we have to make decisions on. I know the writing is small. I had to fit a lot of names onto this whiteboard, so hopefully you guys can read it. If not, just follow me through here. So first name is Jerron Reed. He's a free agent this offseason. The website that I use, which is Spotrac, projects that he is due a 4-year, $42.5 million contract. So it seems unlikely that we're going to be able to get him for a cheap 1-year prove-it deal because he didn't do that much last year. Somebody's going to buy into his potential and his talent. Probably not going to be able to get him for cheap, which is the only circumstance under which I would want to keep him. But anyway, last year he had 27 tackles, 2.5 sacks, forced a fumble. He's going to be 27 next year, so age is not really a concern. He played less than 500 snaps last year, so, I just don't see anything there that tells me he's worth a 10 mil a year extension, almost 11 mil. All right. Next name is Quentin Jefferson, also a free agent this offseason. Spotrac projects he's due a 4-year, $20.7 million extension, and I'm good with those numbers. Quentin Jefferson, he doesn't show up in every game. He flashes occasional brilliance, but there's a lot of dead time with him. But I like him. I think he's a solid player. Last year, 27 tackles, 4.5 sacks. That might actually be 3.5. I may have miswrote that. And no forced fumbles or interceptions. 27, played over 600 snaps last year. So he's all right. He's all right. He has room to get better. He's improved every year since he first came onto the scene in 2017 with the Seahawks. I think I would like to bring him back for this number if this is indeed the accurate number, but there are a lot of options if we don't. So now we move on to free agency, and there are all kinds of names here, and there are names I left out. There are guys out there that the Seahawks could get who I didn't even have time to list here. So if you don't like everything here, there's probably somebody out there that you do like, but it really just depends on how you want to build this defensive line. Do you want to make your defensive tackles the star of the show? Do you want to get long-term options? Do you want to get 1-year stopgaps while we, try to find some young guys who can become the long-term solutions? Do you want to get veterans? Do you want to get, you guys see what I'm saying. But I went through free agency. I picked out 15 names that I think are noteworthy for different reasons. Some of them I like more than others, but let's get started. First name is Linval Joseph, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings. Some of these contract numbers I'm going to use here, by the way, are from Spotrac. Others I had to estimate myself because who the hell knows? And defensive tackle contracts are really, really hard to project because there's so much you don't know unless you watch that player all the time. And a lot of these players I don't watch that much. So I'm doing the best I can. I said 3 years, $35 million for Linval Joseph. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler, but he's falling off. He's 31 years old now. Still a really good player. Still probably going to demand some serious money. 44 tackles, 3 sacks, and a forced fumble last year. Played 559 snaps, so he still was a full-time player, still contributed a lot. I think a player with 2 Pro Bowls under his belt like Linval Joseph will demand an inflated contract. So that's not my favorite. It's a little expensive for a guy who's getting up there. Next name is Damon Harrison, Snacks. He's more of a pure run stuffer. He's never been much of a pass rusher. He doesn't push the pocket a lot. So I don't know if there's a big market for a guy like that right now. I don't know if I want a guy like that right now. I said 2 years, 12 million. It might be a little more. I don't know. I don't know how the league is going to value this player right now. 48 tackles last year, 2 sacks, no turnovers. He's going to be 31, so age is becoming a concern. Last year, 536 snaps. Not my favorite. Next name is interesting to me. Michael Brockers, formerly a Ram. I estimated a 3-year, $24 million extension for him. He's made a good deal of money in the NFL already. He's not old yet, but he's not young anymore. He's not shown that he's a super disruptive pass rusher at this point in his career, but he's still a really good player. I wrote down 3 years, 24 mil, 63 tackles last year, which is really good. 3 sacks, no turnovers, going to be 29, so reasonable. 779 snaps last year. That's a lot for a defensive tackle. So on the one hand, maybe he's worn out. On the other hand, you got to say he knows how to stay on the field. Next name, restricted free agent. The Panthers have to decide whether or not they want to keep him or not. I expect them to let him go, but Dontari Poe, he's been on the Chiefs and the Panthers. I said 3 years, 22 million. Last year, he didn't play a ton. He didn't get a ton of snaps. He got hurt a couple times, I think. 22 tackles, 4 sacks, no turnovers. Going to be 30, so age is starting to creep up on him a little bit. 416 snaps. So the stats are not bad given how many snaps he played. I think he can probably get that 3-year, $22 million contract from somebody. The problem with Dontari Poe is the Panthers had one of the worst run defenses in NFL history last year, and he's got to fall on the axe for at least a little bit of that. So I don't know. Next name is Mike Daniels, and this is definitely one of those bargain bin, bottom of the barrel, stopgap for 1 year options that are not always fun but need to be considered. He signed a 1-year deal last year, did very little, only played about 200 snaps. I wrote down 1 year, 5 million. You could probably get him for. He only had 10 tackles and 1 sack last year. Going to be 31. I think he signed with the Lions and just he didn't do much. He wasn't healthy. He didn't get on the field hardly. This is one of those guys you sign if you're just trying to hold down the fort for 1 year, kind of like Al Woods. So has to be consideration. All right, now things get a little more fun with a few of these names. This one might be my favorite out of all these guys, and I don't know if Spotrac is just way off the mark here, or if there's something about Jordan Phillips that I don't know. But Jordan Phillips might be my favorite free agent of this pool, and Spotrac said he tracks for a contract of about 3 years, 18.6 million, which compared to some of the contracts we're going to go over later, which a lot of them were Spotrac projected, it's not that much. And when you look at Jordan Phillips, last year, 31 tackles, 10 sacks, double-digit sacks. He forced a fumble. He's only going to be 27, so he's still in his physical prime. 550 snaps, so he was getting a sack on per, once every 50 snaps. That's a really good rate. And maybe there's something with this guy that I just don't know. But to me, these kinds of numbers, double-digit sacks at this age, usually spells 10 mil a year plus, especially in this market. So if there's something about Jordan Phillips that I really don't know, like he's really bad against the run, which offhand doesn't make a lot of sense to me because Buffalo's defense was good last year. If you can actually get this guy for 6 mil a year, I think he's the guy. I'll come back to Jordan Phillips later. Next name is Michael Pierce of the Ravens. Not a big name at all. Not much of a pass rusher, which I'm not crazy about. But it has to be said, our run defense last year was ass cheeks. So we need to get better there somehow. And Michael Pierce, 2 years, $9.5 million, very reasonably priced. 35 tackles and a sack last year. He's only going to be 27, almost 500 snaps last year. Hold on one second, guys. My Discord is blowing up. All right. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm not going to stop recording and restart. Michael Pierce, reasonably priced. Nothing special or sexy about him, but perfectly adequate option. God damn it. Dude, where is that coming from? I turned my speakers off. This is a... What the hell? My speakers are off. That should be impossible. Wow. Okay. Sorry. All right. Shelby Harris is the next name. I think he was a Bronco, but I got some of these names mixed up. Went through a lot of them today. Going to be due a fat extension, 3 years, $37 million according to Spotrac. But he's a really good player, and it seems like he's a well-rounded player. He 49 tackles, 6 sacks, and a forced fumble last year. Going to be 29, so still relatively close to his prime. 650 snaps last year, so he stayed on the field. He was just an all-around really efficient, really effective player. There's going to be a heavy market for him for sure. Next name is Vernon Butler. This is another guy I like too, but he's going to be expensive. 4 years, $35 million or so. 33 tackles last year, 6 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. Very nice pass rush numbers. Very disruptive. Only going to be 26. Still has room to get better. Still young. 450 snaps last year, so he missed some time. But Vernon Butler seems like a very disruptive player who's capable of getting better. Next name is Ashawn Robinson. This is one of those guys who's going to get one of those, not quite a market-setting contract, but a very big contract. 4 years, $43.6 million, so basically $11 million per. Last year, 40 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, only 25. Still has room to get better. Played 533 snaps last year for the Bears. Obviously was the catalyst up front, along with Khalil Mack, of their dominant defense. So he is going to be due some serious money. I'm not too excited about him because he's not a pass rusher, but he's clearly a good player. All right, Danny Shelton, next name. And this one's actually kind of fun to think about. Big nose tackle, run stuffing dude, and he seemed to have developed a little bit of a pass rush this offseason, or last season, rather. 3 years, $14.3 million, very reasonably priced because he's not an obvious super stud. But for the Patriots last year, 61 tackles, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, only going to be 27, so he's still young, still in his prime, 508 snaps. That's an interesting option that I would strongly consider. Seems like he can help against the run, but it doesn't seem like you're completely forfeiting the pass rush with him, which I like. Next name, and this one I hesitate to include because I don't really want him and I don't think it's realistic. Javon Hargrave of the Steelers is going to be due a record-setting defensive tackle contract. Spotrac says 5 years, $74 million almost. That is a market-setting contract. Last year for the Steelers, 60 tackles, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble, only going to be 27, 700 snaps last year. So he stayed on the field. He was very productive. He's not really what I want. I don't even know if he would fit this defense, but I had to list him because he is going to set the market. Next name is DJ Reader, another guy who's going to come close to the market-setting contract. Spotrac says 5 years, $60 million. The Texan defensive tackle. 52 tackles, 2.5 sacks, no turnovers forced last year. Only 26, very young, very much reasonably in his prime. 629 snaps. Yeah, 629 snaps, really good. All right, we're in the home stretch now. Last 2 names. These guys are not big-time, high-profile guys, but like I said, we need to consider multiple ways that we build this defensive line, this interior. Sometimes that means signing non-sexy, middling guys. Zach Kerr, he was a Cardinal last year. Spotrac says 2 years, $8.1 million, so reasonably priced. Nothing special about him. 19 tackles last year, only played 332 snaps. I think he got hurt, but he's only What is he? He is 30, so he still probably has a little bit of tread left on the tires. Just somebody who can fill in while we try to figure out what we're doing for the long term. And the final name is kind of interesting, Malik Collins. I wrote down 3 years, 30 million for Malik Collins, but it's a wide range of contract that he could get because on the one hand, he has shown some pretty significant pass rush ability as a defensive tackle. He had 4 sacks last year, but only 20 tackles on almost 800 snaps. So I don't really know what to say about him. He's very young. He's only going to be 25, and I feel like there's really something there, but I don't know what the market's actually going to be on him. So that's 15 guys. Guys, I've never done that many, but there were so many different defensive tackles that were worth a look that I just had to go all out. And we still have the draft. We have to talk about the draft. So, my feeling is that if you are going to be a rookie, you are more likely to be able to make meaningful contributions as a tackle than you are an end. Because an end, in order to be a big time contributor, you typically have to get a lot of sacks. For a defensive tackle, not so much. So I would be more on board with betting the future of our defensive tackle position for 2020 on rookies. But let's take a look and see who we like. First name I got listed is Justin Madubuike from Texas A&M. 6'3", 304, so he's a little undersized for a defensive tackle, but should be fine. Runs a sub 540 time, which is really good for a guy that size. Last year for Texas A&M, 45 tackles, 5.5 sacks, and 2 turnovers forced. So he's disruptive. He was productive, and we would need to spend a first round or a second round pick to get him. And I would definitely be willing to consider that. Next name is Ross Blacklock of TCU, 6'4", 305. So he's also a little undersized. 5.43 time, but last year, 40 tackles, 3.5 sacks, no forced turnovers. He's a guy who's projected to go anywhere from the first round to the third round. Interesting option. Next name, Neville Gallimore from Oklahoma, 6'2", 304 pounds, and ran a 5.540 time. So he's a slow guy, but fairly disruptive regardless. 30 tackles, 4 sacks, 2 forced turnovers. He projects to go anywhere from the second round to the third round. All right, next name, and now we're getting to guys that I like a little bit more in terms of the value. I like these next 3 names a lot. Just putting that out there. First guy, Laryl Murchison from North Carolina State. He's undersized for a defensive tackle. He's 6'2", 294 pounds. Runs a 5.2640, but last year had 48 tackles and 7 sacks. So he's really disruptive and able to push the pocket. He projects to go anywhere from the third round to the fifth round. A lot of people seem to think he can move up, maybe even as high as the second round, depending on how the pre-draft stuff goes. I like him. This next guy I might like more, though. This guy might be my favorite in terms of value. Devon Hamilton from OSU. He's 6'3", and 327 pounds, so he's big. He's a full-size defensive tackle, runs a 5.240, 28 tackles, 6 sacks, no forced turnovers. So he was able to get after the quarterback. He was disruptive despite being that big. So I feel like there's something there. I really like this guy. Third round through fifth round is where he projects to go. And the next name, the last guy that really caught my eye when I was trying to scout this was James Lynch. And he's interesting because he might be more of a defensive end in the NFL. He's a little undersized and he plays kind of like you would want a tweener to play. So I don't know what he's going to do in the NFL. He might play end, he might play tackle, but he played for Baylor. He's 6'4", 295, runs a 4.2840, which is really fast. Last year for Baylor, 41 tackles, 13.5 sacks, and he forced 3 turnovers. Again, his skill set won't necessarily translate to the NFL in the most obvious ways, but he is projected to be a third, fourth, or fifth round pick. And I like that guy a lot in terms of maybe a project, somebody who we could count on being there in 2 years. Maybe they'll be ready to contribute for us. Just a thought. All right, next name is Benito Jones from Ole Miss. 6'1", 321, so he's very stout and thick, which is nice from that position. 5.4 40 time. Last year, 30 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 1 forced turnover. Another guy projected to go from the 3rd to the 5th. Rashard Lawrence from LSU, another bigger guy, 6'3", 317 pounds, 5.21 40 time. 28 tackles and 2.5 sacks and 1 forced fumble last year. So not big stats. Obviously playing on a bit of a higher caliber team on LSU tends to bite into your stats a little bit. But another guy, 3rd through 5th round. And we're almost done. We've got McTelvin Igum from Arkansas. 6'3", 307 pounds, 4.82 40 time. So he's another quicker guy. And last year, 39 tackles, 5 sacks, 1 forced turnover, projected to go from the 5th round to the 6th round. Final name, just somebody you can think about as being a sleeper late in the draft. Kevin Thurman from Arkansas State. 6'3", 298 pounds, 5.19 40 time. Last year for Arkansas State, not a big college, I know, but 54 tackles, 4.5 sacks. Projects to go in the 6th, 7th, or undrafted. And that's everybody I got, guys. That took a while. That was hard. That was a little tough to get through, but that's the way I see it. These are the names that I think we need to be considering going into this off-season period. But my ideal, if you put me in charge and said, what route would you like to take given this is what's in front of us? And I want to say there are a lot of different routes that I would be okay with. There are a lot of ways to build the interior of your defensive line that I've laid out here, and I would be fine with quite a few of them. I think my favorite would be you keep Quentin Jefferson for the 4 years, $21 million. I would bring in Jordan Phillips, assuming that for some reason you could get him for $6 million a year. I don't know why, given he just had a double-digit sack season, but somebody's going to have to fill me in on that, what's going on there. And then I think I would draft Devon Hamilton in the 4th round. We have 2 4th-round picks. I would use one of them on Devon Hamilton and have him be kind of somebody you develop the way we developed Jarron Reed 4 years ago. Okay, that's everything, guys. This is a long video. Yeah, there was a lot to go over. What can I say? But let me know what you guys think. We only got one video in this series left, so I'm going to crank it out before free agency actually starts. Free agency might not start anytime soon the way things are going, so who the hell knows, but go Hawks. See you guys soon. I will try to stream tonight, but I'm not sure if I'm going to, so if I do, see you there, and go Hawks.